Good afternoon, folks. We are live and direct once again. Let me get everything switched over to the right layout, get the BGM turned on, and we will jump back in with today's drawing stream. All right, we have audio, we have video. Hey, Red Dragon's here. What's up, Red Dragon? Red Dragon is also resubbed for 8 months. Thanks, dude. The alerts didn't go off because I don't have them enabled on the loading screen, but I did see it, so thank you. It's very kind and generous of you. How's your day going? I'll tell you, this weekend has just flown by. But it is what it is. Alright, I think we got everything good to go. The BGM playlist we're running through today, for some reason Spotify still doesn't show up on my music player source. I gotta fix that at some point. But I've added the SOTS tracks to the master BGM playlist. So just like this one, which that one's volume's a little bit lower than some of the others, but you'll be seeing, or hearing rather, the new tracks from SOTS coming up in the rotation now. In fact, I can see on the playlist there's a bunch coming up. So what are we doing today? Like I mentioned earlier on in the week for today's stream, we are going to be picking up the discussion of concepts and brainstorming some more ideas for the Halloween project. And I've got some new stuff to show you folks that I've been working on off stream, and we'll kind of be doing like a joint brainstorming session just like last time. So that should be interesting. Red Dragon says, badly, but I'm surviving. You? Oh, sorry to hear that, dude. Hopefully you get a chance to just chill out and forget some of the problems for a bit here on stream. As for me, I can't really complain. I'm kind of tired in general, but I got nothing, really to complain about. Just been busy this weekend, and then back to the salt mines and grinding out tomorrow. We do the whole thing again. But any day I get to hang out with you lovely people, it's a good day for me. Alright, let me make sure I got my layers all squared away here. Okay, so I'm going to leave the concept sheet we did last time in the background, so we're not looking at just a blank canvas. But to start off, I told you folks that I would discuss hardware a little bit since there's been some updates. This is the last time I did a drawing stream. I talked about how my previous drawing tablet died out of the blue, and I had to get a new one. And I've been messing around with this one for maybe about a week or so. And I finally feel like I know it well enough that I can talk about it and give some feedback to folks who might be curious about drawing hardware. And so this one that I'm using is an XP Pen 22R, I think it was. It's the same product I'd sent to Red Dragon a while back when we were talking about it. Let me double check. Yeah, 22R. There's a couple different models of their 22. But I wanted to get something that was going to be the same working space as my old Cintiq that died. But I didn't really want to go bigger just because I'm kind of limited in my desk space. And so, let me see. I might be able to draw a little example of what I've done here. So I went with the 22R, which was considerably less expensive than the Wacom Cintiqs. And the tablet itself is a lot thinner and a lot lighter. This thing is considerably less heavy than the same size of the Cintiq that I used to have. The screen is a little less glossy. That's what I noticed. the Cintiq almost feels like glass on its surface. The 22R from XP Pen, it feels a bit more like a screen, but the surface doesn't really affect drawing. I use a glove, so I don't want to smudge and smear all over my drawing surface. But the tactile feel of the tablet is a little different, but to me it doesn't make a big difference at all as far as the drawing. The pressure sensitivity is pretty good. The responsiveness, there's no real input lag at all that I can see. This is using a pen or pencil. For using a pen for something like a stabilized inking and doing line work and whatnot, it's pretty sensitive, it's pretty responsive. The 22R also has customizable buttons laid out kind of similar to the Cintiq on the sides of the tablet. There are 10 on each side, 5 and 5. And the reason why I wanted to go with this one over something like Gaomon, which is what Waza uses, was because I like the orientation of the buttons. And I don't think the Gaomon she uses has buttons laid out the same way. It might have a couple, but I don't know if there's as many. But this one kind of mirrors the way the Cintiq was set up, which I like. In addition, so I guess, here, since I can't show you physically what my tablet looks like, I'll do a real-time drawing of what this thing looks like. So if this is the drawing area here, the buttons are here, not exactly to scale, but just pretend there's 10 of them on this side. In the middle, there's this circular thing, which is a new addition to the XP Pen hardware, from what I understand. And that thing is a scroll wheel. It twists, and it could zoom. This is similar to the function that the Cintiq had, but the Cintiq didn't have a thing on the front. There were these strips on the back side. If you were to put your hands around the tablet, there were these strips on the back that were touch strips on the Cintiq, and you could slide your fingers up and down them to zoom or to scroll. For the 22R, it's just a wheel on the front, which I think I like a little bit better since all the buttons are on the front too. So there's no real reason to be kind of cradling and holding the tablet from the back, which is nice. I'll have to figure out what I want to do with the buttons on the other side. This whole setup right here is also mirrored over here. I'll do this. So there's another 10 buttons and a wheel on the other side. This is a rotate. And I think I have to customize it based on the program I'm using. But if I wanted to rotate my canvas, then I could do that using the stuff that's on the right side. In addition to getting the tablet, I think I've talked a little bit about how non-feng shui my work setup is on my desk. I invested in an arm for this thing, for the drawing tablet. In the past, when I had my old Cintiq and we would do these drawing streams, the tablet would be basically like this. This is my desk, looking at it from the side. The Cintiq would be like this, and it would have a stand here that swivels up and down this way, and here's the screen. Red Dragon says, "Oh, cool, you got the bottom one." I was thinking to get the bottomless one. It doesn't ship to me. You mean of the ones that I sent you in the chat? Yeah. Oh, the button one. Yeah. That sucks that it doesn't ship to you in your location. I forget where XP Pen is based, where that company's from. I'd have to go look. But this was my old setup, right? And basically, if I wanted to draw, here's a pen, I would have to take this monitor and flip it down a little bit because I like drawing directly kind of over my surface instead of vertically. But I have to slide it out this way this is the back of my desk right here, right? And then when I wasn't using it, I would flip it up and then just slide it back. And this is maybe my main monitor, which was okay. But the fact that the Cintiq itself was so massive, it was taking up pretty much the entirety of the desk space in front of me whenever I'd be using it, which meant normally my keyboard is over here and my mouse would be over here. When I had the Cintiq out, I did not have space for a keyboard if I wanted to be able to be working directly on top of it. So the keyboard would have to get shoved off to the side. I have an L desk, so the perpendicular part of the L, it's diagram day today. If you're looking at it from the top, all this stuff is right here. Here's me sitting on the chair, and the object is right here. So the keyboard would have to go over here, which is a real pain in the rear to try and type stuff if I needed to do commands or if I needed to respond to something, because my keyboard would be off to the side and I'd have to basically do some yoga poses in order to get my hands and arms over there. Short, stumpy arms. So that was the setup before. Now, I'll redraw the desk setup again. With the 22R, because it's lighter, and I wanted to be able to actually have some workspace and not go crazy every time I did drawing stuff, I got an arm for it. So this thing's connected over here. It's got multiple different things that swivel. But now here's where the monitor sits. I have it bolted onto the arm, and when I'm not drawing stuff and using this as a main monitor, it's back here. And it actually is right about eye level versus my Cintiq before, since it was sitting on my desk, was a bit lower. And when I want to draw, instead of having to slide everything out and lose all this real estate on my desk, I just pull the arm forward to, I'd say about more like here. Flip it down diagonally. And now I can draw on the thing. Red Dragon asks, can you link me your desk and the arm? I have had this desk for like 6 years. I don't know if I still have the listing for it because I can't remember if I bought it on Amazon. Let me look. I know it would have been about 2018 after I moved. We'll take a quick second. Let me check my listing real quick. I do have the arm though. I could send you that. Let's see. I'm not going to pull up my browser. That would severely dox me, and I'm not going to do that. Let's see. 2018. I think I bought this online because they shipped a very, very heavy package to me. Oh, yeah, there it is. Got it. Okay. It was a Zinus Luke 59-inch black metal corner desk. Okay. I'll send you the product details, Red Dragon, if you're curious. Yeah, I've seen your layout. Your layout's similar to mine. Mine's same orientation as yours in the corner, but the L desk is longer. I'll show you what I mean. It's more like a uniform L piece instead of like a short foot L piece. Yeah, you'll see what I mean. Or I'll send this to you. Instead of it being one long part and then the perpendicular part short, it's two long parts in an L, 90 degree, 59 and 55 inches. I wish it was another foot longer on the short side. But let me go grab the information for the arm. It was an Ergotron arm, which I did some research as far as what people typically buy for drawing tablets. And I bought one that supports up to, what's the weight limit on this one? Up to 25 pounds. And it seems to have a pretty universal fitting for whether it's a monitor or something like a drawing tablet. It definitely fits the 22R. I was able to just bolt it straight on. And it seems like a pretty beefy arm. Like, it doesn't have any drift. It just sits in whatever position I move it to. And hopefully it'll last a while. But if we go back to our drawing surface here, the thing that's nice, one last diagram and we'll switch gears, or at least get back to the tablet itself. Before, looking at my table from the front now, it used to be main monitor here. Again, think of it as having a stand in the back. This was the drawing tablet, my Cintiq. And then for streaming, I had a vertical monitor over here that usually has chat. And then a regular monitor over here, sort of at an angle. And this would be all my programs, OBS, all that stuff. And this would be my setup, which was fine. Again, when the tablet was flipped down, it would really limit how much room I had to work. But now, with this new setup, it looks like this. Again, looking at it from the front, we have the horizontal monitor over here with chat. And when the tablet is pushed back and not flipped out to draw on, now it's over here. And then the other monitor is still over here. I actually lofted it up a little bit so it's kind of in line. So now everything is a bit more uniform. It doesn't have all the stuff at different heights. And it looks a lot nicer, and I have desk space if I need it. All this real estate here I can use. Whoop. Red Dragon says, that desk looks better than mine. With my desk, the legs get in the way. Yeah, that's kind of annoying. I'm actually right next to the legs on the left of the L. And if I'm not careful, and like I spin out of my chair, I can smack my knee against the metal supports on it, which I've done a couple times, and it is not fun. But that table model I sent you is pretty sturdy. I've had this one a while, and it has shown no signs of getting worn or about to break, because its surface is wood, but it's bolted in with these solid metal legs on each side of the L and at the joint of the L. So it's a pretty sturdy table. I just wish it was longer on the opposite side. But let's see, anything else of note on the hardware? I'm still kind of learning the 22R, but largely I was able to just take all of my settings and everything from what I was doing before and then just start drawing. There was no real big adjustment. I just had to kind of configure the device a little bit differently. I will say one thing that I don't like about the XP Pen package, which is a minor gripe. I was telling Pwops about this when we were talking last week. The Wacom stylus, which look like this, has a little click button here for like right clicks. This is what the Wacom stylus look like. The XP Pen stylus looks very similar. Same rough shape and size, but on the Wacom one, it had this thing on the end, which was a little pressure sensitive button that would be like a pencil eraser. And whenever you flip the stylus around and you put that sensor right here to the surface of your drawing, it would automatically trigger the eraser. So rather than hit the eraser command, you could just flip your pencil around like you would on a piece of paper and it would erase. The XP Pen one doesn't have that. It's just there's nothing on the end. There's no sensor. It's just the end of the pen. So I'm kind of used to flipping my pencil around to erase things, and I can't do that anymore. And while that is annoying, one of the advantages of that setup I showed you before is when I have the tablet out on the arm and I'm drawing and my desk is down here, in the past I'd have to move my keyboard, but now I can keep my keyboard right here. So I don't really need to worry about being able to hit commands because my keyboard's right here. It's right underneath my monitor. I can hit whatever keys I need. So rather than have to worry about it, now I could just hit E for eraser. This one's different from Photoshop. This is P for pen. And I could do all that. So it's a trade-off. I know XP Pen has a piece of hardware that is a stylus with an eraser. I'm trying to see if I can get one. But in the meantime, because my hands are right on my keyboard and for the most part I have all the button commands memorized, I could just hit whatever I need instantly. I don't have to worry about it. It's just a little bit of an adjustment for now, but not a huge deal. But yeah, other than that, got no issues with the XP Pen 22R. Seems like a pretty solid piece of hardware, and we'll see how long it lasts. Like I told you folks before, my Cintiq I used for 11 years. It's a long time for a piece of hardware, but given how expensive it was, I would have hoped to get, at least a decade of use out of something like that. This one being a fraction of the price, if I get 5 to 7 years of use out of it without it catastrophically failing, then I'll be happy. But we'll see. We'll see. If you guys have any questions about hardware or the device stuff, if you're in the market or considering looking at changing tools, just let me know. I'll try and answer questions to the best of my ability. Between this one and the Gaomon products, I think there's a lot of options for digital artists that are not going to break the bank. I think if you're a professional working in a professional environment doing art, investing in a Wacom product is probably going to be worth it, especially if you can have your employer subsidize parts of that hardware. But if you're not working in a professional environment for art and you need something that's going to be functional but not break the bank, there are cheaper options, smaller screen real estate tablets, and even ones like this one, which are bigger but comparatively much cheaper. Like, to give you an example, this one was a little less than $500 because it was on sale. The Wacom 22-inch Cintiq is about $3,000, a little less. It might be around $3,000 after tax and shipping. So, 500 versus 3,000. Pretty big difference, and quality-wise, I'm not seeing a huge disparate jump in the products. So something to consider. All right, so what are we picking up with in the drawing stream today? Last time we sat down to do a drawing stream, we were brainstorming ideas for the Halloween album. And what we spent our time doing was experimenting with some ideas for one of the factions in the story, in quotes, for the Halloween Project. I still haven't settled on a name for them, but the divine beings, like these sort of angelic celestial entities, are one of the forces or factions that'll be part of the overall story of the release. And we talked about ideas of things like really armored, biblically accurate, angel-inspired type of entities, but a bit more kind of chaotic instead of just, very clean, very symmetrical, very sort of organized looking. They'll still be kind of decked out in really elaborate armor and whatnot, but it's supposed to be a bit more kind of gross and otherworldly, like you'd see in biblically accurate angels. And so this is all the stuff we did last time. I just have the results of the brainstorming session up on screen here. The other faction, which we're going to be spending today talking about, is the Natural Order. And I think I'm going to commit to that name. I like the way it sort of sounds. It's pretty simple. But the Natural Order are the opposing faction to the divine beings. And unlike the kind of heavenly, ethereal creatures from like the celestial plane, the Natural Order are more kind of shamanistic, druidic society of individuals who worship like the old gods, essentially, kind of trying to bridge a gap between like the older pagan type deities and maybe even some Lovecraftian stuff, instead of like a divine higher power like the opposing faction. And so if we flip over to one of the other canvases, I have already done some brainstorming for concepts and ideas with this group, and this was partly the result of some sketching off stream when I had some ideas. And last week, the week before this one, I sat down and was on a call with a friend of the channel, Pwups, and we were talking about ideas. I wanted to bounce off some of these concepts off of Pwups because they're a much better character designer than me. And so I was presenting the idea for the setup with these factions and this temple, which is the site of the conflict, and coming up with ideas on how to sort of flesh out the Natural Order. So let me label this one so people can see it. So for the Natural Order, what we have here are a lot of individuals or characters that are wearing masks. I think one thing that's going to set this faction apart from the others is you're going to have kind of the more heavily armored, almost like medieval armor-esque type things with the angelic group. But this one is going to be a lot more, I guess, hard to describe, more natural as far as what they wear. So a lot of masks, like this one right here, would be like some sort of creature skull and feathers. This one down here, actually both of these two, this one down here is a mask kind of fashioned like a bird. And what we kind of talked about was the idea that the individuals would be wearing a lot of robes, cloaks, and kind of flowing garments and not combat armor, metal armor. Instead, you'd probably be seeing things like bone armor, shell armor, a lot of talismans and totems and things, adornments like we have here that are used to sort of signify unique things with the different characters. And I like the idea that the masks reflects the function of whichever the individual's role in the faction is going to be. So this particular character might be like a shaman type caster or some sort of ritualistic magic user. Haven't really decided on the idea of magic and stuff yet, but their function might be more casting things or using incantations or even rites or rituals. But these two might be more combat focused, like forward Templar or weapon wielding attackers on the front lines. And I think there's a lot of potential to do some interesting things with the idea of, again, natural order. So drawing power from the elements, drawing power from nature, and using that as sort of a conduit for the different functions of the different people in the faction. You have things like down here, this particular one, has these things coming out which look like tree roots. And so one thing Pup suggested, which I hadn't even thought of when we were talking about this last time, was the idea of bringing in plants as part of the theming and concepts for some of these characters. And I hadn't thought about that. I was mostly thinking about animals and kind of animal spirits and stuff like that. But a big portion of nature, things in the natural world, are plants. And I really like that idea. So kind of probably experimenting more with that today and trying to incorporate some more ideas for not just animals, but plant-based characters. And I think there's a lot of potential for that, including a concept which I'm probably going to focus on for the start. And it's this one right here, the last one. We were talking about what kind of fighting type characters a natural or nature-based faction would have. And then we started talking about plants and things like trees, flowers, and all sorts of stuff as different things you could factor into a character design. And I can't remember if, I think it was Pwups who mentioned it first, and I sort of developed the idea a bit more. But we had this idea of a mushroom-based samurai character. And I really think that's a neat idea that I want to explore a little bit. So if we were to zoom in here, kind of explain what I'm talking about. I don't know what the name of the hat is in Japanese, but it's a hat typically seen in wanderers and people that are out there, and it looks like this. It's that wide brim, really flat hat that's strapped under the chin. Usually it's made of like straw or a really light type of material. You see it in characters like, I think it's Yojimbo from Final Fantasy, and it's got a pretty distinct silhouette and sort of shape to it. People usually recognize that, oh, that's like the Japanese wanderer hat. Different from like a rice paddy hat, which looks like this. I think it may sort of derive from that, but oh, it's called a Casa hat. Did you look that up, Red Dragon? I did not know that. Okay, that makes sense. I never knew the name for it. There's different versions. There's straw. Yeah, straw hats. I guess that makes sense. Casa means umbrella. It's like an umbrella hat. So the idea was taking the idea of this flat, maybe not so triangular, but like a flat hat that a wanderer would use, or something like a samurai. But instead of it being straw, it is a mushroom cap. And so if we think about how the character silhouette would be, you probably have something like the mushroom cap. I thought it'd be cool to have kind of more like a toadstool cap with eyes. That's what this design here was meant to invoke. But then you have the person here and rather than have like a reed or like a straw cape like you'd see on a wanderer, again, I'm just doing a rough thing here. I'd like to flesh this out more in a sketch, but rather than have like a straw or reed cape or cloak, one thing that Pwup suggested, which I also thought was really cool, is you have like a multi-layered fungus or mushroom cape. We looked it up. I forgot to write it down, but there's a type of mushroom that's very sort of wispy and billowy. It's not light, but its texture is very sort of ridged. It's kind of hard to describe, but it's got these long sort of patterns and striations and textures on it. And I think it's edible. I know, what was it, lion's mane might be a similar type, But we looked it up, and it has these sort of folds and things. I'm doing a bad job. I'm not really great at drawing fungus. But it has like a texture of almost like a really intricately patterned fabric. I'm going to look that up. It's going to bother me. Let's see. Mushroom. Let's see if these keywords will get it. Oh, maybe they sent it to me. Let me look at my chat. Oh, that's just a picture. That illustrates it a little bit better. Let me try here. Almost looks like flower petals the way it grows out. If the mushroom is growing from here, they're these kind of fan-like petals that grow out like this. And on the surface, there are these lines, like these really narrow, almost vein-looking like textures. And it's got a neat sort of pattern. But the idea was to create the cloak for the figure out of something like that, and duplicating that texture, which was going to be a nightmare, I can already tell. But I think it'd be a cool effect. And if we just sort of define the rest of the character's outfit, maybe we do kind of like the loose-fitting pants, which I don't know the name of those either, but those kind of baggy-looking wanderer pants. And I was thinking about weaponry. Red dragon asks, are the leaves red? The color of the fungus that I'm using as kind of like a main idea inspiration for the cloak here, it's not red. It would be more kind of like a pale color. Since this particular fungus I'm looking at here it's kind of a beige, pale, tan, like really, really light beige brown. But it could even be something that matches. If we went for like a red kind of toadstool cap, maybe we did kind of like a red similar matching shade on the cape too, so it's the same. It would kind of depend. We also talked about the idea of doing like a scarf, and this is something that's not terribly good at conveying the idea right here on the image, but the idea was the scarf would be, I don't know what it's called. I have it sketched out here. Some of the fungus out there, when it grows, has these kind of like white veiny things that grow over something. We saw it on some of those Pokemon Fusion Parasect custom sprites people did, where there's all these like white veins growing across the surface like it's infesting whatever it is it's growing on. I don't know what that's called because I'm not a mycologist, but the idea would be this samurai character would have kind of like a scarf or like a wrap coming from around the neck that would be like a fabric or surface but patterned with these like white trailing things, or even just have them coming off like this too. A little bit hard to describe in concept, but maybe if we're talking about like a scarf. So here's the surface of the scarf. And the patterning coming off of it is that fungal growth or whatever you call it. So it's like a texture pattern. That has legs. I think you could do something interesting with that. Red Dragon has got a normal pick of it. Let me look. I don't know what it's called. It's some sort of part of the mushroom itself that facilitates its growth over whatever it is it's on. But I don't know what it's called. Let me look. Let's see. Fungus. Onychomycosis. That sounds like a disease. That is not what I was looking for. No, definitely not. What we need is someone who studies mushrooms would probably be able to tell us. I'm getting a bunch of hits on like infections and other gross things, which is connected to like fungal type things, but is not really what we're looking for. Oh Lord, shouldn't have done an image search of that. That's gross. Red Dragon says, if it's what I think, the Japanese use it to rebuild their subway trains. Be news to me. I have no idea, dude. I think it's got to be just like a design element. I don't know the actual ecological name for it. I'll look into it later. It's just something I've seen. It probably has something to do with spores. That's my guess. But if we go back to our rough sketch here, for weaponry, I thought a little bit about what would make sense for a character like this. The first obvious idea would be a sword, right? Something like a katana or like a traditional samurai type weapon. But I also thought of an interesting idea of a more polearm based weapon, kind of like a spear or naginata, but instead of it being a cutting weapon or like a piercing or slicing weapon, instead it would be like a staff of sorts. And I didn't really think too much about how I would do the patterning on it, but basically like a mushroom staff that's used to spread and manipulate spores. So this would probably be more like a mushroom mage instead of like an attacker. So using the stick here, maybe we have kind of like mushroom or fungal growths on it. It's used to manipulate and maybe cast or grow different types of helpful or dangerous mushrooms as a means to attack. Or even casting spores directly at a target. Like maybe this thing can project spores out as a cloud that are some sort of harmful, debilitating presence for whatever inhales them or comes into contact with them. To me, I think that could potentially have some interesting ideas for abilities. But I don't know. I kind of want to try a couple different possibilities and see what I like the most for the concept. So let's take this. We're going to copy this into a new layer, and let's actually work on fleshing out a more detailed sketch for this mushroom character. So far, this is the idea that I've found the most interesting for this faction. So I wanted to experiment with it here on stream today and see if we can come up with some interesting ideas and flesh that idea out some more. So what we'll do... Alright, let's work on this one. We'll sketch out a primary pose that we can work with at a larger scale. And I sort of picture this character being a bit slighter of build, not a really big, heavy, bulky type character. Let's move you further up. There we go. Pose-wise, we'll create kind of a simple standing pose, not super important for brainstorming and just basic details. But we'll do something like this. I'm talking with Plups about the concept and ideas for this faction, for the Natural Order. I said, I'm not exactly committed to the idea that these are humans. I think one key through line that'll be similar to the Angelic faction is you're not actually going to see what they look like under whatever's they're wearing. So be it clothing, armor, whatever, you're not going to be able to see the person underneath. And to that end, I like the idea that we just don't know. It's not important for the story if these are humans or other types of creatures. Instead, it's more like what their role is, how they function, and their powers and all that stuff. So let's see. We take this as a basic primary, and I think we can use that to sketch out some ideas. Oh, I need more than one of those. Hey, Snake's here. Snake says, hi, how's it going? Hey, Snake. Welcome to the drawing stream. It's going good. We are just talking about some ideas for characters in the upcoming Halloween project and going through some ideas of basic concept designs and design elements that we can work into the characters. I'll explain a little bit about this one we're doing here. I'm just trying to organize my layers. I seem to have duplicated these a bunch of times. Okay, let's get rid of you. That way we don't have too much layers cluttering up our document. So for this one, we are putting together the ideas of a mushroom-based character. We're talking about incorporating things like a Red Dragon looked it up, a Japanese casa hat, which is normally the kind of wide-brimmed straw hats that you see people wear, whether they're working out in the field or traveling or whatnot. And adapt that into something mushroom themed. Oh, let's see. Let's create another layer work on top of this sketch. Might be a little too large. Snake says, that's pretty fun coincidence. When players in the D&D campaign I'm in, Mr. Dirtbones is playing a Muffler Man? Mushroom? Do you mean Mushroom? Similar type of characters, like a fungus mushroom human person. Maybe something like Dark Souls-ish with the big... Yeah, I gotcha, Snake. That's what I figured. Oh, that wacky autocorrect. Well, that's cool. I don't like the way that looks either. We want something that's kind of broad and somewhat triangular, but not pointy. It's a little bit better. And I like the idea that the face is kind of obscured. Snake says, yeah, his hat is basically one of those Japanese rice hats, but has a mushroom top. That is exactly the idea that we're kicking around here. That is a really interesting coincidence. I'm clearly not the first person to think of that idea, but I do have some ideas on how to take that idea and run with it in a more unique direction. Because one thing we were talking about, which I'm going to illustrate here, like you'd see on a toadstool cap, kind of like your Super Mario type mushrooms that has all the spots. Like so, this sort of patterning of circular things all around the surface of the cap. We can erase this out here. Snake says, makes kind of sense because he's a weird class of wild shape. Oh, is the character Dirtbones is playing the mushroom guy? Is he a druid? Is that his class? If so, that would make sense. So to sort of flesh the idea out a little bit more and give it kind of a unique spin. Again, Snake, you can tell me if this is something, again, that's parallel to what Dirtbones is doing. Instead of spots, these are eyes. Might be a little tough to see. Let's zoom in. The idea that the character's face is hidden, and it'd probably be something that's wrapped in bandages or something similar, so you can't see their skin. But rather than have it obscure their vision and the person have to tilt their hat up, the way they see is actually with the eyes on the surface of the cap. Kind of like a symbiotic relationship with the mushrooms themselves, or something related to the control over the mushrooms, like a mycologist. I know I came up for a name for it. What was it? Like a mycomancer? Mushroomancer? Something like that. You could even have a thing where there's charms or adornments that are hanging from the inside of the cap. To give it kind of more flair. Snake said, yes, and no, technically he's not a mushroom person, but a slime possessing the dead body of a mushroom person. Oh, I see. That sounds like a fun concept. I think you do some interesting things with that type of character. So fleshing out the idea we talked about before with the fungal cape or cloak. I'm thinking we kind of create these big petals, almost like flower petals, but they're textured like the the veiny and kind of fleshy textures of whatever fungus that was. Again, it looks like it's growing out of a tree, so it's probably some sort of wood fungus. I just don't know what it's called. I have to look it up. As far as the body armor itself, I kind of like the idea that it's maybe a type of thick hide or like a cloth. No heavy armor for this particular character. Aside from the mushroom type armor, it's going to be lighter weight clothing. Mr. Dirtbones calls out from the ether, "Who summoned me?" Hey Dirtbones, welcome to the stream. Haven't seen you in a minute. We're talking about your D&D character. How goes it? Oh, did Snake bring you in here? Yeah. Yeah, sure, go ahead. You can kind of explain the origins and the theming around your character. What are they about? Abilities and whatnot. We're doing concept work for the Halloween project, and one of the characters that I'm designing now is kind of like a mushroom warrior of sorts. And Snake was mentioning how you play a character that has some similar parallels to that. Oh, okay. I see, Snake. That makes sense. I do want to sort of experiment with the idea of the pattern scarf too. Mr. Dirtbone says, might take me a minute. That's okay. If you want to either copy a narrative into the chat or just summarize it, it's up to you. Doing the texturing on the kind of mushroom cape is going to be interesting. It'll probably look better when inked and rendered out, so you can see the difference in color. It'll kind of blend together a bit in sketch form, but that's all right. Mr. Dirtbone says, Gerbener, if that's how you pronounce that, is a slime type of being that was once a science experiment made by two scientists with different goals in mind. Okay. And Snake says further up, it's kind of fun because all of our characters in that campaign are basically the basic D&D classes, but with a twist. Gerburn, okay. Who runs your game again, Snake? Who's your DM? Is this the one with Bubby? I can't remember. It hasn't come up in a while. Phoenix, okay, got it. Ooh, here's an interesting idea. Oh, I have to change the perspective a little, but I like the idea of like a belt that has vials of mushroom spores or something that the character can use either as a combat or a support or healing function. Third player is Rira. Nice. How long has that game been going? How long into your campaign are you guys? I have been part of a D&D campaign for, it's like 3 years now, I think. We've been going a while, but we only meet every other week. So it's taking a bit longer to progress through, but it's definitely been fun. I kind of treat our D&D sessions that I part of as like an improv practice. My character's a bard. I play a beatboxing dragonborn bard who beatboxes for lore reasons, and it's pretty fun. The main arc we're on in that campaign is directly related to my character's story, which has been interesting. Snake says, we're still kind of early on. We're on break until Rira gets the right time slot they want for work. Gotcha. Okay, so a little bit early on in the campaign, but it sounds fun. Red Dragon says could be gourds on his belt. Ooh, I like that. Yeah, that's a good point. This could be sort of like a utility belt of sorts for a bunch of different useful things that the character needs. Watch me completely screw up drawing a gourd. I'm gonna fix it. Thinking those kind of large, I don't know what that type of gourd's called, but you know what I'm talking about. It's got kind of a large round shape, and around the neck of the gourd would be how it's being secured to the belt, you like tied with rope or cord. Yeah, it's a good suggestion. I like that. Could even have like writing or like runic inscriptions on the surface. Maybe we have cords tying off at the knees for the pants. Mr. Dirtbone says, one day one of his creators' father took him far away in a forest in which Professor Oak, an orc, died. A type of sentient fungus took over his dead body somewhere around the time Gerburn woke up. So it's like a sentient fungus controlling the body of another host is the premise, huh? Gerburn took over Oak's body and started to pilot it, not knowing it was already occupied. Found himself in a tavern where he met Snake and Rira's characters and the rest of his history. Okay. Interesting. So I'm assuming it's going to be a plot point as far as the characters' true origins and where they came from. Maybe for the legs, we do kind of like a armored protective greaves type deal, and maybe armored sandals or something. Not good at drawing sandals. I'll have to figure that out. I really should have worked on drawing this in a more neutral pose. I haven't ruled out the idea of giving this to another artist and commissioning actual fleshed out drawings for these. I'm not quite there where I have enough finalized concepts. But it's either that or do it myself. So that's what I'm sort of wrestling with in mind right now. We'll see. Snake says, so what's really new to me for my character, his name is Ark, and he's a rogue, and it's my first jerk character. Ah, you're playing like a kind of heel type character? That's got to be fun. I think in my campaign, our druid is kind of like our jerk type character. Early on, he had a penchant for just hitting things with his druid stick without thinking about it first, which caused a bit of a problem for the party. Usually you want to be careful and not just hit things without considering the consequences, but that wasn't his bag. His bag was, nope, I'm going to hit him with my stick. And run away. It was his other thing when he caused a problem. It was just a bail. Mr. Dirtbone says, one important story point, Gerburn finds a heart of perfect creation known as the Hecaton. The joke is I took a hecaton of slime to make in the lab with one of his other siblings, absorbed siblings, and ate the heart, giving him a bit of hecaton's power. Also, fun fact, Gerburn is my first spellcaster. Okay. Interesting. When you said hecaton, I thought you were making reference to Hecaton Kyres, which is a titan? What mythology is that? Greek? Hecaton Kyres is 100-handed. Greek mythology. They've shown up in a couple different pieces of media. I think they're in the SMT series. 50 heads and 100 arms. They were born to Gaia and Uranus. Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of from SMT. That'd be something cool to work into your lore. Would be a good thing to put on the staff. Yeah, maybe we do kind of like larger spores. For thinking this kind of like a caster type thing, these could be like actual fungal spores, and maybe they're kind of sprouting out of the staff in different places. And maybe like a gnarled wood. A metal staff wouldn't make sense for something like a mushroom caster. Alright, let's save. I haven't saved once the entire session. That could be bad. Alright, let's zoom out and sort of take stock of what we got here. Okay, so this is built on the concept we talked about so far. I think that's got potential. I don't know if I'm going to use this exact pose, but I definitely think this helps inform the core concepts of the character. I like the inclusion of the gourd. And things like the cape and everything else. Yeah, it's got potential. Red Dragon says, "Some about character designs now has got me thinking about fully changing my OC. My OC's looks now, making it more humanish. Instead of like a dragon-based character, you're talking about your avatar? Like a more humanoid version?" Snake says, "Arc is simple at the beginning. He came from a rich family. His mother and father were terrible people, though. He was raised by a good butler. Until during one of his father and mother's transactions, the law finally caught up with them, and they were able to make the butler take the fall. After that, Arc ran away and just picked up skills of living, kind of closing himself off from the world and becoming a jerk." Ah, I see. So all of the things that happened with his parents and like framing the butler shaped his sort of negative worldview, and why he kind of became that type of person. All right, yeah, that seems like a good arc. Character growth is kind of him figuring out how to trust people again, maybe. All right. Let's move on to another idea and concept that we can flesh out. First, we'll go back to... No, we'll use this one. We'll use this one, but let's go back to the main natural order sheet here. Red Dragon says, "Making him look more human, so maybe I could use him as a VTuber." Ah, I see. There are, well, I don't know too much about it, but I know there are people who use non-human type VTube models and they rig them and animate them so that they can move and talk. I do want to do that for my model at some point. It's very low on my priority list, but I wanted to be able to have like a homeworld form that my model can switch to, but I got other things that I'm working on now. But depending on what you wanted for an avatar, you could have either or both. Just depends on what you want. All right. So I do want to switch up the focus. Oh, Red Dragon says, "My avatar's dragon face is meant to be a mask." I didn't know that. I thought your character was just a dragon creature, your avatar. I guess we haven't really talked about the lore, but there's supposed to be like a person underneath. I got you. So I think what I want to do next is focus on a more combat-oriented creature from this particular faction, or character, rather. And, oh, let me think. I believe I need 6. I need 6 characters from each faction. Or 8. Was it 8? I need to go back and look at the track list. It might be 8. I might need 8 and 8 for 16 total. And I think the Halloween album's going to be 16 tracks. So we need an equal split from each faction. So this concept sheet that we have here is not the be-all, end-all. I'm going to need more ideas and things. So we can also do that as part of the stream as well. Red Dragon says the dragon mask is a mask that is breaking away and showing the darkness within. Oh, I see. So it's kind of like a shell housing the inner spirit or personality of whomever's underneath. Snake says, after Mysterious Phoenix made me unwittingly pull a card from the deck of many things, I was lucky enough to pull the Moon. The Moon card gave my character a one wish. He wished for the power to break the strings of fate. Actually became a Kamen Rider. Of course. Thematically on point, Snake. Alright. Before we figure out which design we're going to try and adapt, let's think of some poses that we can use. Maybe I should do just a neutral pose, neutral standing pose. If I'm going to use this as a concept for someone else to draw. Maybe we do this for the next one. That way we can show all the detail in a front-facing view, again, neutral standing pose. Another thing that Plups and I talked about when we were doing a sort of brainstorming session is for the natural order, I like the idea that the characters' bodies are fully obscured by whatever it is they're wearing. So it might not be like you're wearing a cloak and all you see is something like this. But if the outfit is clothing, armor, or whatever, and masks, you don't see the person underneath. And the idea behind that is obscuring all of the details that don't really matter for the character and the concept. And one thing we talked about is, for the Natural Order faction, you have no idea what the gender of the characters is because you can't see gender-specific details on their body or faces, anything like that. It doesn't matter. It's not significant to the characters what gender they are. They're just, this is the combat type character, this is the mage, this is the priest, this is the shaman type character. And I kind of like that idea because then you don't really have to worry if, what representation or anything. It doesn't matter. It's just, these are the characters and here's their function. It's open-ended. It's open to interpretation more than anything else. And I kind of like that idea. So to that end, I'm not drawing these prototypes and sketches with any specific gender in mind. It's just to establish the pose and be able to show the character designs themselves for this faction. For the angelic faction, I like the idea of gender being more clearly established for them as a counter contrast. So let's go for, again, neutral standing pose, but this person will be holding a weapon of sorts. So to figure out what it is. Okay, forgive my kind of rough, primitive, almost stick figure-like primaries here. What I really should do is learn how to use the symmetrical function in Clip Studio. I know how to do it in Photoshop, but I don't really use it in this software, and I probably should. It would make some of my character sketching a little easier if I could just mirror what I'm doing. I know it's a command, I just don't know where it is. The dragon says near the A on your left. Is that about the text marker? I know it's up here. Let's see. It's a toggle somewhere. I don't have my windows here in Clip Studio set up like other people, so it might not be on my toolbar. But again, I'm sketching stuff out, so I'm not too worried about symmetry. We got a hydrate and a stretch reminder from Snake. Ugh. All right, so what we're going to do is, rather than take a specific character and adapt it, I want to just kind of experiment with some ideas for the pose itself. And one thing I was thinking about for the more combat-oriented members of the Natural Order faction, they're not going to be in suits of armor, because that's really a design element from the Angelic faction. But I kind of envision, sort of like you'd seen a druid class in D&D, since you folks know D&D stuff, kind of a mix of like cloaks and robes, but using things like bone armor and whatnot to protect the body. Even if they're combat and weapon users, they're going to need to have protection. Otherwise, they're going to get carved up and cut to pieces. Our dragon says it's called ruler and looks like a triangle ruler. I might not have that enabled, so I probably have to find it and put it on my toolbar. Yeah, these are line tools. This is text tools. Let's see, I might be able to set it here. Well, that's just general ruler. That's not what we want. Yeah, like I said, I'll have to look into it later. It's not really that important right now. So if we're thinking about outfits that would make sense for a more combat-focused member of this faction, we could do sort of like a longer draping garment like this, and then add pieces of protective things for armor purposes. Kind of like monk's robes, now that I'm thinking about it. If we could combine the idea of like a monk's robe with armor. One thing I was definitely kicking around as an idea would be animal skulls. Animal skulls and bone armor is going to be primarily what this particular faction is going to be using for protection. maybe kind of like long, obscuring sleeves, but we add in adornments and accessories that'll add additional detail. Maybe protecting the midsection and waist, connected kind of like a belt or like a midsection guard. You have another animal skull. Could even add like clawed gauntlets. I think the other faction is probably more likely to have that, but maybe some sort of protective gear on the hands that would be able to be used as protection and can double as maybe something you can use to attack as well, which like sharp talons or something woven in, kind of like you see in certain types of glove garments. Same thing for maybe bracers or armor patterns that are on like the forearms. I did want to come up with a good archer type class. Might be in a future session or something I work on some more. But since the natural order is again more nature based in their abilities, I like the idea of like a ranger or archer class that uses a bow, like a bow and arrow. I think we can have a lot of fun with designing some interesting bows and arrows. Taking some Monster Hunter type designs. That'd be fun. This character, I kind of envision using some sort of blade. I'm going to figure out what that's going to look like. Red Dragon says Spider Archer. Yeah, interestingly enough, I'll see if I can dig it up on this. I think it's on this one over here actually. Nope. This one. We came up with this interesting design, Pups and I, when we were talking before. And so the bow here on the right would be like an octopus bow with 8 legs, and I gotta define like the middle a little bit better. Maybe use like the beak for the sight in the middle of the bow. But we took the idea of a spider and made it part of a shield. So again, this one right here is a little bit tough to make out the details, but it would be like a spider wrapped around a buckler or a circular shield. But the thing that we were kicking around was it's not a pattern. It's actually a spider that just hangs out on the shield and can be sent out, you know, Monster Hunter Insect Glaive Kinsect style as an attacking assist. So you'd have like a spider tamer essentially. On the outside of the shield, the spider is armored enough that it can protect. It won't be vulnerable. But in addition to serving as protection for the shield, it can be sent out. So imagine fighting someone and, you know, they're deflecting things with this intricate spider-like shield, and then they turn around and just throw it on your face. That could be pretty effective. And one thing that I think would be cool, I just sort of thought now, we didn't really discuss it before, but the octopus bow, it could shoot like ink quills. So the arrows it shoots might be crafted out of shell or bone, but when they're shot out from the bow, the either glands or part of the octopus coats them in like an ink that can blind, or maybe it's like a venom. So that's another part of the idea that would be kind of cool for the octopus bow. Snake says the pocket sand ability. Exactly. You never see it coming until you have a spider in your face. We were talking about making each faction have its own distinct writing system for decoration and design purposes, which I think would be a cool idea. So like the angelic forces would be very runic and character based. These are just random symbols, but like the writing would look like that. And for the natural order, it'd be more symbol based, like block symbol based. So theirs would look kind of more pictogram like. And they'd be blocked in with colors versus this one is writing, like lettering. So you have two different styles of writing that decorate the outfits of each faction. It's something I want to work a little bit more on. Snake says, I rewatched all of King of the Hill earlier this year, and the show still holds up. Are they doing like a reboot, or are they bringing back King of the Hill? I thought I saw an announcement recently that said they were bringing the series back. It's a funny show. It's a show I can't really watch because I lived in the area that it takes place in, that it makes fun of in Texas. I've lived there before. And so it reminds me a lot of where I used to live. And the exact same people, almost one for one. But the show is pretty funny. It's a good show. Just hits a little too close to home for me to really be able to enjoy. Oh, continuation. Okay. I think it's the original cast too, right? All of the people who worked on the first one, except for I think one of the voice actors might have died. I don't remember which one though. Maybe we have capes, like fur capes. Oh, Dale and Luann are the ones who died. I see. And it was Mike Judge who voiced a lot of the other characters, right? The creator of the show. That was a long time ago. Here's an idea for a bladed weapon. We could do like a double-bladed glaive type weapon, talking about glaives earlier. Maybe take some ideas from Elven Designs, since one of their whole deals, they're part of nature, right? wouldn't really tie this particular faction into elves specifically, but some of the design ideas could be useful. Snake says, one character I'm wondering what they'll do with is Bill. Like, how the hell has he survived 2024? It's a good question. No, the conspiracy guy was Dale. I'm not too up on the lore of King of the Hill because I haven't watched the entirety of the show. But there's definitely going to be a lot of current event stuff that is very topical and relevant to what was going on in the show, which I think is pretty funny. Yeah, Bill's the fat, sad, divorced guy. Snake says, Mike Judge has proven to me that he's still funny thanks to Beavis and Butthead. Oh yeah, Mike Judge is a great satirist. He's good at doing things that make fun of tropes and things that are topical again and current. That's what a lot of people didn't understand about Beavis and Butthead. I didn't really watch it back in the day. It wasn't really my scene. But that whole show is meant to satirize everybody. It's supposed to make fun of, like, stupid rocker stoner guys. It's supposed to make fun of, like, all of the preppies and classists and everything else. It's just one big parody and satire, but people thought it was being serious. Alright, let's clean up some of the details here. Snake says the new Beavis and Butthead movie was pretty funny and good. When did that come out? That came out somewhat recently, right? (2021, 2022). Oh, okay. Within the last couple years. Snake says I forgot how time flies. I hear you, brother. We are already in June of 2024. This year is just flying by. Can't believe it. It's only going to get more and more hectic as we get closer and closer to election time in this country. I'm not looking forward to it, but we just got to get through it and survive. Oh, whoops, that's not what I want. That is the rotate canvas function. We do not want to rotate our canvas. All right. Snake says, I'm not looking forward to the election. Nobody is. Trust me. It's just going to be ugly and messy no matter what happens. But the rest of the world is also going through its own share of messed up stuff. It's not just this country. Oh, it's got to look out for each other, man. That's all you can do. And try not to watch too much mainstream media. Makes me glad I don't watch TV. definitely want to keep up with what's going on in current events, but avoid watching biased media coverage if you can. Snake says, I mean, yet I hear Canada has to deal with a guy named PP who looks like Millhouse. Yeah, that's the premiere in one of the areas. Is it the one that's in Alberta? I don't remember. I remember talking to Wazzy and Matt about that. Was telling some folks I was talking to earlier this week about how seeing like references to Civil War in Canada trending on Twitter. I don't know what that's about. I should probably see if the Canadians I know can corroborate what's going on. I hadn't really been following news up there, but again, there's wacky stuff going on in every country. I see Red Dragon's going to be back momentarily. All right. Well, actually, let's switch gears here. Let me save this. I want to sketch out some face concepts for the Natural Order faction before we call it a stream. So let's go back to our working. Here we go. Yeah, we'll do a new one. Put it right above this one. I got to reorganize all my layers. This file's kind of a mess. There, we'll use this. Side profile, we'll use this as our base for sketching stuff out, just to be consistent. So let's think about mask ideas for the Natural Order faction, and that's going to be kind of like their main thing. Having masks that represent either some sort of animal or other creature that's in line with what the function is for the character. What if we did like a bug mask? I don't think I've done that yet. You could do like the fuzzy antenna like on a moth. Snake says, mask, you say? Yeah, that's kind of right up your alley, Snake. Maybe not true Kamen Rider-esque, but taking the ideas of masks representing some sort of trait or characteristic that reflects the wearer. I don't know if I like that. It looks more like hair. I feel like for a character like this, it'd be more kind of wrapped, like close to the head, not billowy. Looks more insect-like. Snake says, I've been trying to get into other toku. I finished Space Sheriff Gavin. I have not heard of Space Sheriff Gavin. Is that a new series or an old one? Put some texture over here, kind of like this. Space Sheriff Gavin. It's an old series from the 80s. How did it hold up? Given like a lot of the Toku tropes and stuff you know from more modern series, how did the older one hook up or hold up in comparison? Plot is basically our main character is the Space Sheriff, who is disguised himself as a run-of-the-mill ranch hand who's trying to take down evil space mafia. So it's kind of space western. It's a Space Sheriff, so that should have been the tip-off there. It's like a futuristic space western. Is that kind of the vibe they're going for there? All right, let's do another one. These are fairly quick to knock out, so I could sketch through several things at once. This will be another sort of kind of armored helmet / mask. I was telling Pwups that some of these mask or helmet designs are reminiscent of some of the demon soldiers in Berserk, which checks out since that's my favorite manga. And Griffith's army, the demon army, some of the recruited demons have these interesting helmets and armor shapes. It says kind of like a western. So every episode we usually have a bad guy who's doing some crime, and then the main character shows up, does his thing. That's the end of the episode. So kind of like criminal of the week, monster of the week type stuff. Show does have an overarching plot. Basically, our main character's father was working on something and then mysteriously disappeared, leaving him and his mother behind. And his mother died from disease, leaving him by himself. So he's trying to solve the mystery of like what his father was doing. Interesting. It sounds like it'd be a pretty compelling plot. Her dragon says, "Rejoice, I have returned." Welcome back. We're sketching out some more concepts for the natural order before we wrap up for today. And talking about 80s space western tokusatsu shows. Snake says, to be honest, I really enjoyed my time with the show. Oh, nice. That's good. So what's next on your docket? You gonna keep going through the older toku shows, or mixing it up with the newer ones, or what's gonna be kind of like your focus going forward? This particular one right here, similar to one of the other ones on the first sheet. I think I'm definitely going to go with one of these helmet types, like mask helmet types. If we hide this one, go back here and zoom out a bit. This one right here and this one are two of my favorites of the more heavily armored looking masks. So I might do something with that first one with the long kind of sloping horns. Kind of like a bit of a twist on like a bull skull with the horns. But obviously much more eyes than your standard cow. I think I have to do some more brainstorming on how to structure the rest of the outfits for the body. That's probably going to be the most difficult thing for this particular faction. The other one, I can use a lot of like divine armor tropes, like holy knights, stuff like that, paladins. I could take a lot of those designs and repurpose them for the angelic faction, but for the natural order, it's going to be a bit more challenging. One thing we talked about when I was brainstorming ideas with Plops is palading, which is what these dots are down here with the colors. We talked about if it made sense for the kind of more nature-based faction to have a lot of earth tones, greens, and maybe more vibrant colors for things that are incorporating plants, plant-type concepts. I like the idea of the mushroom mage type character. Maybe we go for the brighter red-orange toadstool color and darker markings or a darker outfit. Or we go kind of like a death cap mushroom, or even more like a portobello, where it's a very dark type of mushroom color. I don't know, a lot of options. I do think maybe bring in some Lovecraftian imagery or things wouldn't be a bad idea either. I have to go and do some research on things that are within that type of style that are not just, Cthulhu. But overall, a lot of ideas. I'm going to need to start getting some things concretely together before we get too close into summer. Since, again, looking at Halloween, that's what all these things are for. So I need to have an idea of what I want so I can either get working on it or start figuring out if I can work with some other artists. So recap, before we wrap up for today's drawing stream, our main focus was the mushroom caster mage type character. And this is a rough sketch of the ideas we sort of put together and bounced around with. And I think it's definitely got legs. I think if this one's refined a little bit more, and then maybe set up with a good color palette to identify the colors in the outfits or whatnot, then that's a concept that we can definitely roll with. We also sketched out this one. This is a more combat-oriented character. Just taking a kind of generic armor and helm as a placeholder. Thinking about ideas for the weaponry is another thing I'm going to have to kick around and kind of experiment with. But I do like the kind of jump-off point of using bones, skulls, and other things for armor pieces. And from here, I think it's just going to be developing the idea further for other types of combat-oriented characters. Like a more heavily armored lancer type would be cool, like a lance type weapon. Snake says, one thing I forgot to mention about Space Sharp Gavin is it's the first show in the Metal Heroes franchise, which eventually got to B-Fighter, which would get adapted into Big Bad Beetleborgs. Oh, okay. I know that series. So you get to see kind of like the origins. That's cool. Red Dragon goes, how goes the Goblin? I actually have a finished concept picture of the Goblin character you and I were talking about. I will send it to you when I get off stream so I don't forget. But it's like a headshot of the character, and you can use it for your story or adapt it however you want. But if you wanted to see a visual representation of what I came up with, I'll send it to you and you can take a look. Snake says, have you heard about the Mind Goblin? You mean Mind Goblin? Nice try, Snake. I've heard that one before. You're going to have to try a little bit harder than that to get me with the D's nuts joke. It's happened to me once on a stream so far. Oh, and I see we got 2 hydrates from Snake. Just in time to wrap up for today. We'll keep the latest version of the faces here. This is something I'm going to work on some more off stream for sure. Snake says, do you know about Imagine Dragons, the band, or Imagine Dragon D's nuts? Come on, you got to try harder. Come up with something new that I haven't heard yet. Red Dragon says, never got hit by a D's nuts joke yet. Alright, that sounds like a challenge. I'll remember that next time we're co-streaming. Think up one that Red Dragon will fall for. Okay, let's take a look at who is online, who can raid. Let me grab my list before we wrap up. It's a little early in the afternoon, so not a ton of people are on. Maybe we can look for someone new. Let's see if we can find a VTuber who's doing art. Oh, I wish there was a better way to sort this. Snake says, Dragon, you just put a target on your back. Challenge accepted. Red Dragon says, it's a duel for the next co-op stream. Oh, you're going to make me write a list if you're going to play it like that. I could definitely give it a try. Just a whole bunch of people. Let me open it up to the chat. Snake or Red Dragon or anybody else who's still hanging out in chat. Oh boy. There are a lot of bots. A lot of bots in chat. That's okay. Red Dragon says, bet on it? You want to bet on it? I'll have to think about that. That's a lot at stake. Oh, Lib's on live. I think Lib just went live, in fact. Yeah, they're getting started. You bet a gifted sub on who's gonna fall for a D's nuts jokes first. Okay. Good idea. I will think about it. I'm not afraid to bet. I'm a gambler. All right. Let's go raid Lib. I haven't raided them in a while. Let's see what shenanigans they're getting up to today. So let me get this queued up. We'll pause the BGM. Mute you. And that is a loading screen, not the outro. Let's go to outro. So we will call that good here. Thanks for hanging out and helping me brainstorm ideas for the upcoming Halloween project. It was a good discussion, and I like hearing about all of the stuff that you folks are getting into as well. Next week's stream schedule will go up for the end of the day today, once I figure out what I'm doing. It's probably going to be Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. I was confirmed at Red Dragon. I think we'll be resuming Elden Ring on Sunday. So I'll figure out what I'm going to be streaming during the week. Probably more Hades, and maybe we do Hades Dyson Sphere. We haven't done DSP in a bit. But in the meantime, hope everyone has a good rest of your day. Now let us go and see what Chaos Bear is up to. Have a good one, folks. I will catch you in the next one.